Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eric Schuettpelz. I'm a curator here in the Department of Botany. And whether you're joining us here in the room in Baird or joining us online via Zoom, I'd like to welcome you to the 21st Smithsonian Botanical Symposium, which this year will focus on advancing plant conservation through horticulture. The Smithsonian Botanical Symposium is brought to you through a longstanding partnership, now obviously more than 20 years, between the United States Botanic Garden and the National Museum of Natural History, with Smithsonian Gardens now joining us as well. And to start things off today, I'd like to invite Dr. Rebecca Johnson, Associate Director for Science and Chief Scientist here at the NMNH, to the podium to say a few words of welcome.
Thank you so much, Eric. As Eric mentioned, is that sound okay? As Eric mentioned, my name is Rebecca Johnson, and I am I'll give you my new title, the C.W. Whitney Chief Scientist and Associate Director for Science at the National Museum of Natural History. And one aspect of my role includes the honor of overseeing the nation's herbarium and the talented team who work and study there. And we've just met one, and I'm sure that you know the team extremely well, because it is my pleasure on behalf of the Sant Director, Kirk Johnson, and the National Museum of Natural History to welcome you to the 21st Smithsonian Botanical Symposium. And as Eric just mentioned, this is held collaboratively between the Department of Botany here at the museum, the United States Botanic Garden, and Smithsonian Gardens. We are incredibly proud that as of last year, we now have a fully digitized herbarium. This means that 5 million of our specimens, it's absolutely worthy of applause, and a special shout out to Sylvia Orley, who I'm sure many of you know, who coordinated that mammoth project with the Digitization Project Office here at the Smithsonian. This means that our 5 million specimens, which includes 115,000 type specimens, is now available to anyone with an internet connection. The benefit, I don't need to tell you about the benefit, but I shall. It is multifold. Firstly, this is now a worldwide resource for researchers in taxonomy, systematics, evolution, physiology, ecology, and of course, conservation biology. And the more researchers that are now able to work with our collection means it becomes even more valuable to all of us as they add their information to that collection resource. Having an accessible collection is critical to the topic of our symposium today, entitled Advancing Plant Conservation Through Horticulture. For conservation biologists, and I would consider myself one of those people, data derived from a geographically and temporally broad collection like ours is critical, as it gives empirical insight into biodiversity of the past, present, and directly informs our ability to elevate species of concern through tools like the IUCN Red List. It is also exciting to see our collections being used in new and novel ways to answer big questions. And I was absolutely delighted to see an example of this in the genomics space in the recently published article in Nature, Phylogenetics and the Rise of the Angiosperms, which I'm sure many of you read very eagerly. This was a paper led by Kew Gardens, analysed for the first time genomic data of nearly 8,000 genera, or over 85% of known angiosperm species diversity. And that was made possible, I'm directly quoting from the paper, thanks to the collaborative effort of 163 herbaria in 48 countries. Talk about a connected world. This project is a great example of why we are all here today, to share our own expertise and collaborate on one of the most pressing issues of our time, which is, what does life on a sustainable planet look like in 2024 and beyond? And how do we all make a difference, starting in our own backyard? This is something we cannot do alone, so it is now my privilege to welcome one of our partners in this event, Dr. Susan Pell, Director of the US Botanical Gardens, to say a few words. Thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you so much. I am really honored to be here and really excited about this topic, which is, of course, near and dear to the mission of the U.S. Botanic Garden. There we go. So U.S. Botanic Garden is the oldest continuously operating garden in the United States. We were established in 1820, and teaching people about the importance of plants to people and also the environment has been core to our mission since the very founding of the garden. And today we welcome over 1 million visitors every year to enjoy our grounds and to engage with our nearly 45,000 number plant collection. And we do this through multiple different ways, simply providing a wonderful space for people to be in by offering engaging programs both online and in person, and also by engaging in scientific activities. We actually do a lot of research in partnership with other organizations such as Smithsonian, but also many of our partnering institutions across the country. Those include large initiatives such as the ones that we have with Botanic Gardens Conservation International. You'll hear a little bit about that later from Abby Hurd today. Also collaborations with other public gardens such as Morton Arboretum, organizations such as Chicago Botanic Garden, Denver Botanic Garden, San Diego Botanic Garden, et cetera. And the idea here is to really be, for us to be a hub of collaboration where we can together advance conservation much more effectively than we can as individual institutions, both from a standpoint of expertise, from living collections, from the work that we do in situ in the environment, and also in how we share these stories with the public through media and through visits to these public gardens. Some products that we've developed through our partnerships include things like the Sustainable Sites Initiative, which many of you may be familiar with. This is essentially the same kind of certification as LEED certification rather for buildings. So site certification essentially ensures that landscapes are being developed sustainably and being managed sustainably after they are developed. We also have done some direct conservation work through these partnerships to rescue imperiled species, such as a rare oak species found in Texas, Quercus tardifolia. You can see the picture at the top here is the team that rediscovered that species in Texas that was previously thought to be extinct. And now we are using conservation horticulture to propagate that species with the intent of preserving its germplasm ex situ and also in situ and reintroducing that species into the wild. I'm very excited to hear the talks today. Really wonderful, looking forward to the wonderful engagement in the event that we're going to host at the U.S. Botanic Garden afterwards. And also want to just open up to all of you and to your colleagues that U.S. Botanic Garden really can be a resource, not just for our partners, but for individual scientists who may be interested in utilizing our collection or may be interested in learning from our horticultural experts at the garden and how to advance their own research projects as well. Look forward to seeing you all later at the garden tonight. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Rebecca, and thanks, Susan. Next, I'd like to welcome Dr. Larry Dorr to the stage. Larry's a curator in botany here at the NMNH as well, and he's going to present this year's Cuatrecasas Medal for Excellence in Tropical Botany.
Thank you, Eric. The 2024 recipient of the José Cuatrecasas Medal for Excellence in Tropical Botany is Dr. Peter F. Stevens. Most recently, he held joint appointments as a professor of biology, University of Missouri, St. Louis, and research curator, Missouri Botanical Garden. A native of the UK, he received a bachelor's degree from Oxford University and then went to Edinburgh, where he studied with Peter Davis and Bill Burt, both prominent and influential British botanists. The former was co-author with Vernon Haywood of Principles of Angiosperm Taxonomy, as well as editor of the Flora of Turkey. Peter received a PhD in 1971 with a dissertation simply titled Taxonomic Studies in Ericaceae, which is the blueberry family. A paper derived from this work and published the same year in the Botanical Journal of the Linnaeus Society, however, influenced the generation of research on the family. From Scotland, Peter went to Papua New Guinea, where he was employed for 3 years as a forest botanist, There he collected plants mostly in the highlands, gained further experience with tropical Ericaceae, and developed interest in other primarily tropical plant families such as the Clusiaceae. This period was also influential in fostering his interest in plant families, identification, and tropical botany. Leaving New Guinea, he moved halfway around the globe to accept an appointment as an assistant curator at the Honor Arboretum of Harvard University, which had a long-standing interest in Asian and Malaysian botany. He eventually also became a tenured professor, and in addition to his curation responsibilities and teaching, Peter served as principal advisor to a number of graduate students interested in tropical plant systematics. While at Harvard, he also began publishing on aspects of systematic philosophy, especially examining the conflicts between morphological character states and phylogenetic hypotheses. Moving halfway across the continent to St. Louis in the late 1990s, Peter continued his research and teaching, but also became one of the advocates of the angiosperm phylogeny group synthesis, which married morphology and molecular data. The standard references for plant families and phylogenies at that time were books by Taktajan and Cronquist, both static syntheses that quickly became dated with the advent of the angiosperm phylogeny group's first publication in 1998. Peter, of course, was one of the co-authors of that publication and the three subsequent iterations of their classification. As a consequence of the APG synthesis, Peter became involved in constructing the angiosperm phylogeny website, a remarkable and valuable online tool for anyone interested in up-to-date information on the 400+ families of flowering plants. Clearly, Peter has contributed substantially to advancing the field of tropical botany. I feel compelled to add a personal note, which is my appreciation for Peter's role as a mentor. In 1977, when I first became interested in botany, I wrote him out of the blue, stating that I was interested in Ericaceae. From then on, whenever I was in Boston, which was several times per year, I'd make a pilgrimage to the herbarium on Divinity Avenue, where Peter worked. We would talk about Ericaceae, plants, and botany in general. I was impressed with how he shared whatever ideas he was then exploring, and I was also fascinated, perhaps even slightly appalled by the way in which he would have the herbarium specimens he was studying scattered across every level surface in his office, floor included. Soon after meeting, Peter encouraged me to take Harvard's summer school offering of plants of the tropics, which was then taught at the Fairchild Tropical Garden in Miami. There I had the good fortune of having two Cuatrecasas Medal winning instructors, Barry Tomlinson on the far left and Peter second from left, whose ability to command attention from botanical students was only compromised when someone sighted an alligator. So it's with great pleasure that I present the Cuatrecasas Medal to Peter F. Stevens.
Well, thank you all very much. This was, to say unexpected and a great honor is an understatement. I'd just like to say a couple of things about tropical botany. You've heard about this recent paper, this 7,500 genera that has just come out. As a result of that, we know how little we really know about the big picture in many aspects of tropical botany, including the main families of tropical trees. That's in Ericaceae and Malpighiales, both of which we mentioned. And we know very little about where families that everyone knows about, like Rafflesiaceae, with its huge flowers, and Podostemaceae, sort of quote unquote water weeds. We know so little about these and where they go. Podostemaceae in particular I'll take sort of bets at the end as to where it's going to be in 10 years' time. But anyhow, all I'd like to say is to all of you is there's still everything to play for in terms of understanding relationships, and yet more to play for in understanding basic morphology and anatomy, so you can really get at understanding evolution. Thank you all very much.
Congratulations, Dr. Stevens. So we've got a pretty darn fantastic lineup for you all today. For those of you online, obviously you have access to the speaker abstracts and bios. For those of you in the audience, there's a QR code on the program. You can pull those up with your smartphone. I'm going to do my best to keep things on time today. But note that everything on the board up there is, and this is especially important for those of you joining us online. These are targets. We're going to do our best. I'll also note that those of you who aren't in our time zone, these are Eastern Daylight Time. Speakers, I'm definitely going to need your help to keep on time. Everyone's been allocated a 30-minute, excuse me. That's an important detail, 30-minute slot. And it would be wonderful if you could allow some time for questions. I'll try to wave a hand at you, let you know when about 5 minutes remain. For those of you joining us online, the webinar features closed captioning, live closed captioning. To turn this function on or off, you can click the CC button at the bottom of your Zoom interface. Of course, if you have a question for a speaker, you can submit it using the Q&A box, again, at the bottom of the interface. Questions from the live audience, of course, can be asked directly, but we'd ask that you use a microphone, and there are microphones at the front of the aisles so that the folks online can hear. For those of you here in the auditorium, if you need public Wi-Fi, it's the SI Visitor Network. Bathrooms, if you haven't already found them yet, are in the Constitution Avenue lobby, where I suspect most of you came in. If you just head out straight ahead to the lobby, men's is to the left, women's to the right. For those of you who are joining us at the reception this evening, as Susan noted, it'll be at the United States Botanic Garden, which is right at the foot of the Capitol. Here's a little orientation map for you. We're sort of at the museum in the upper left of that screen, and the USBG is again right at the foot of the Capitol. If you make your way to the mall, look to the Capitol and walk toward it, you'll see the glass houses. I will say that your Smithsonian Botanical Symposium name tag will be required for entry into the USBG. So if you don't already have your name badge attached to you, please remember to pick it up during a break from the registration table right outside. Okay. So the symposium, of course, does not happen by itself. I need to acknowledge, first of all, our sponsors, which include the United States Botanic Garden, the NMNH Department of Botany, Smithsonian Gardens, as well as the José Cuatrecasas Botanical Fund and the Mellon Foundation. I'd also like to thank the USBG, NMNH, and Smithsonian Gardens staff for their assistance, and especially Marianne Aposelli, Amir Ali, Tiara Boyd, Nancy Kahn, and Sue Lutz for their help with speaker travel, funds management, and other logistical support. The organizing committee for this year's symposium consisted of Amy Bolton, Eric Calhoun, Joy Columbus, Larry Dorr, Rose Gullidge, Carl Johnson, Gary Krupnick, Susan Pell, myself, Warren Wagner, and Ken Werdak. And a big thank you goes out to Gary Krupnick specifically, who has taken a lead role in executing the plan that is developed by the committee.